X-Men 97 has finally made its debut on Disney Plus, and we can't be more excited. This is I Have No Title and I Must podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture. We are your hosts, Tyler
and Chris.
And yeah, we kind of started off with it. You know, it's supposed to be like a first impressions thing, but I think we're both extremely excited about this. We're both huge X-Men fans. I know we say that about a lot of things, almost a catchphrase at this point.
We can like more than one thing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, seriously, X-Men is one of my, if anybody knows me on a personal level, they will know, and I've probably mentioned it several times, Magneto is my favorite character of fiction, thanks mostly to Stan Lee, yes, but Chris Claremont for reimagining the character in such a profound way. And the X-Men as a whole got dragged in with that when I was a kid.
I've been a huge X-Men fan since I discovered the original X-Men cartoon as a kid, so I was really looking forward to the X-Men 97. Kind of skeptical at first. I didn't know how they were going to play it. So far, the first two episodes have killed it.
I was excited when I heard they were going to do it. Having said that, I didn't know, I mean, who knew what it was going to be? Who knew they were going to, that certain members of society would try to politicize this so much? Oops, no, not a surprise. Everyone does that with everything now.
I think we'll save more discussion on that for because I want to start this off good.
Yeah, well, only the first two episodes are out. As of recording right now, it's the day before the third episode, right?
Day of.
Today?
I think so. Released on Wednesday last week.
Did it?
Yeah, I think so.
God, I would have watched it if it's out. Did you watch it?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. So no, as of
checking.
Yeah. So
right
as
now,
of recording, we have only seen the first.
This
two
might
episodes.
become a watch party.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, huge fan of the original show. Even though going back and looking at it, a lot of continuity issues, but I think it still holds up fairly decently.
Yeah. Within a show that only had 5 seasons or whatever.
I think it was 4 seasons, maybe 5. But they got progressively shorter.
Yeah, especially the last season was quite a bit shorter. And I can't remember if I said it to you or on air, but it was the next to last of every episode was an origin story for Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called, but I was I remember when I got the DVDs, probably around the time I want to say First Class came out, or maybe Days of Future Past, but I want to say First Class. I rewatched the show at that time, and I'd never finished it. I hadn't seen the end of it because it was getting harder to watch at that time, and by then I was in high school, so I just couldn't catch it. And I think they did stupid things like they do with a lot of flailing shows and move around the scheduling and stuff.
Yeah.
So I got to the end and I tried not to look ahead, and it's okay, it's Mr. Sinister thing. It's interesting. And then it's just the last episode where Professor X does not die, but gets taken away by Lilandra, who saves him at the last second, because he kind of does die, but she quickens him a little bit. And it's pretty ambiguous because she says he can't really come back because he has to be maintained by this is spoilers for a show that ended in 1996. And so she takes him away and says that, he'll be alive or whatever. And this is in the last 10 seconds of the show or whatever. Yeah. It all wraps up very quickly. What they originally intended to be the end of the show was the end of the previous season, which was this 4-part epic where Apocalypse and all the villains team up, but they were all secretly skeptical of Apocalypse, and Apocalypse had actually promised Magneto the resurrection of his wife, which several episodes prior to that had built on this and how emotionally connected he was to that. The only thing that I think canonically that really, certain things like Angel, they showed photos of Angel in the group.
But yeah, they had no idea who he was.
Yeah, and it's as Angel. It's not like it's a different character, he becomes Archangel in the show. And even in the new show, they have that portrait of the original 5 X-Men, just from the 1963 first issue. And there's this, they even, Iceman kind of looks snowy like he did back then, which is a cool touch, a nice Easter egg for the original show and to have those costumes featured. But when the show first began, they played a little loose with the timeline. How long had they existed as a group? And they wanted to make sure that it felt like it wasn't long. This is a new thing for all of us. We're all still learning. And when Iceman guest starred in the show, they made it sound like he was part of the group early on, but he left at some some ambiguous point. And I'm like, well, how long was he in? Like a month?
Yeah.
2 weeks? How long were they wearing those costumes? Anyway, it's a cartoon show and we shouldn't pick those.
Headcanon, all the time travel they did screwed the timeline up.
That's fair, because they did a lot.
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, skeptical going into this, or hopeful, but skeptical. But then as soon as the intro hit, it's like a nostalgia bomb.
Yeah, that music, it's, you know, if they'd said, we're going to redo the music, I would have been like, this is going to be horrible, like it was like in the last season of the original show. But it was better.
Yeah, it's like
it hit.
a remix of the original theme song. And almost the original opening beat for beat, except with a few hints at what's to come added in. What?
You were right.
What was it?
It's on. It's up right now. I would have watched that this morning. I should have at least checked. Anyway, go ahead.
Like even the ending credits animation is the same as
that they paid homage to how that weird
computer
thing, like they were looking at a website at all the files on the X-Men and it would give a brief explanation for them. That was great. And that they recreated the intro, not just the music, but the intro itself, and added Morph. That was the change, adding him in there and adding in like little nice details to make the animation look more crisp and realistic, and then fixing the lineup of villains at the end.
Yeah,
it was always weird that they had like Pinkhead guy and Warpath. I just thought that was always strange that it was the way it was.
Warpath wasn't even a villain, was he?
No. So I think there were two, and one of his brothers died, or his brother died, and then he took his place, and the mantle of it. I think this was a storyline.
Yeah,
I think they were initially, when they were doing this, whoever was animating it got it in their head that this was because his brother died, that this guy was going to be a villain or something, or they were going to do a storyline. They never once did. I think he might be in the background somewhere at some point, but it's a cameo only. They did not lean into that or do anything with it. The Pinkhead guy, I forget what his name is. He's like some random obscure villain. He's not even an X-Men villain, but he is a Marvel character. So having, what is it? They took them out and added Lady Deathstrike and the White Queen.
Yeah.
So super woke. Anyway, that's sarcasm for those of you who can't subtly pick up on that because of any mental instability that I may have. So, first 2 episodes, I already know how you felt because you texted me, I think as soon as you were done.
Yeah, like the fight scenes, better.
Oh my god, yeah, like real choreography.
The storylines, it sounds like it's going to be pretty solid if they don't drop the ball, but...
Yeah, like it's not going to be individual episodes, like episodic. It is, but it's going to be, every episode is probably going to have a bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
so
some kind of continuation.
Continuous series of things as opposed to 1 or 2 parters. It's going to be a whole thing.
Yeah.
With Easter egg, they've set up a lot of stuff for the future, like so much stuff that all these storylines are gonna play out.
Yeah, those fight scenes.
Yeah, especially Cyclops. Like, I've seen so many people who, because everybody hates Cyclops. It's like, if you're not a hardcore fan, most people just are like, why they even bother with Cyclops? It's like, because he's badass.
Yeah.
And people don't know it unless they've read the books.
I don't agree with all of Cyclops' story arcs in the comic books, but his powers and importance shouldn't be underplayed either.
Right, yeah. So, to beef him up, and I've seen so many people in the comments are making posts on Instagram and wherever saying, this is the redemption of Cyclops. They nailed it, especially when he first comes in with the Sentinels and is, using his optic blasts in, a creative way to, move his own body back. It's almost like a jetpack on his face.
Yeah, he stops himself when he jumps out of the airplane.
Yeah, pushes himself back with it, like a dance, like it's its own form of martial art. That was amazing.
Or the more precise taps.
Yes, that too, which has always been present in the books, and some writers and artists have used it to varying degrees of success, but it's always been available to them. Just, it's hard for animators to get right until now.
Another one of my, oh shit, that was awesome moments is Wolverine and Gambit's team up, where Gambit charged Wolverine's skeleton to explode.
Yeah, that bothers me. It's cool looking, on paper, but my analytical brain is like, but wait, anyway, I'm gonna let you just enjoy that.
Because, I mean...
So, you enjoy that, and I'm not even gonna...
If we're going with his claws are completely indestructible...
Yeah, then should they not be able to be... Yeah, I mean, then what kinetic energy... You know what? Let's just keep this at 70.
Okay, if we wanted to argue that...
You get what I'm saying.
Captain America's shield couldn't because...
It would repel...
Yeah.
The kinetic energy it would almost, if Gambit attempted to charge it, it would just kind of backfire onto him or create some sort of feedback loop.
Discharge.
Yeah.
But Wolverine's claws being able to store the kinetic energy and explode on impact, but be fine.
I wish they had, because they didn't really show what happened, because he got catapulted, let's say, into the Sentinel, and then he just kind of comes out, and we don't really see exactly what happened, but it made for an amazing moment in the trailer.
Yeah.
And people really loved it. I didn't see anybody picking it apart like I am, but it looked cool, and for them to be as like combative with each other as they are, you know, always calling him Gumbo, they made a pretty cool team up. Him letting him literally just kind of jump on his back. All right, that's, I guess, heat of the moment.
The way, just how it fits with the original, I just feel like a little kid again.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I think for like censorship reasons, like all the guns were like laser guns. And it's just like, you know what, who cares? They got these laser guns. And that's how it felt with this. You know, Bishop's using the same kind of energy pistols, and even the bad guys became Mega Man, their little guns on their arms.
Yeah. That looked pretty cool, actually, I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Allison couldn't help but point out, like, that Cyclops, you know, the calling back to Cyclops saying not, the not joke from the 90s. Anybody who's like, oh, that was super cheesy. It was actually what everybody said back then.
Yeah.
So don't forget, this is in the 90s. That's why they're dressed like that when they go play basketball. I don't know what people wear to go play basketball now, but that's what they look like back then. Go watch White Men Can't Jump. Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes?
Yeah, I think so.
Everyone wearing those outfits nonstop. That's my recollection of the 90s. Also, a lot of neon.
Yeah. A few drawbacks for this, though. The animation, sometimes I just get a weird, uncanny valley thing. Not during the action sequences, but like when they're talking. Magneto, especially. I don't know what it is. It just...
Well, because, you know, regular cell animation is more or less on its way out. There are very fewer and fewer things being made that way. Apparently, I don't know if it's a new technology, but what I saw someone say, I can't remember what video, if it was Nando or Ryan Airy from Screen Crush, but this is like the Clone Wars, like 3D anime, like CGI animation, but they put like what they referred to as a patina to make it look like cell animation. Which, why don't they do that more?
Yeah.
I mean, like, some CGI looks good, some computer generated animation looks good, you know, like nobody's gonna complain. Like Shrek looks like that, and Pixar movies make $1 billion every time they put one out. But there's just something, I think, timeless about hand-drawn things, even if it's not real.
Yeah.
Like, if it's cheaper and faster to make something like this, then still just make it look like that. Sometimes, maybe just make it look like that. Some people won't know. You mentioned the acting. I mean, kind of, with Magneto and like how the emoting. I think that's a good segue for cast returning.
Yeah.
Most of the cast returned. I thought Cyclops was perfect.
Yeah.
And assumed that it was the same guy for sure. And apparently it's not, because the original guy died who played Cyclops. So that's one of the new additions. Jubilee is not the same woman, as the original woman said she would prefer it be played by an actual Chinese actress, and opted not to return. And I don't, but I think... And then Wolverine sounded
a little different.
Yeah, but apparently it is the same guy, and he is just doing a different approach, closer to maybe what they had originally intended. This is all hearsay and things that I've gleaned from other sources. I did not interview any of the makers for this show.
I think that's to be expected, though, because even if you've done this for years, there's also even bigger time in between from you having to do that voice and to try and get exactly back into it.
Yeah, Rogue sounded a bit different, and it's the same woman. Your voice changes. I mean, listen to Elton John's first record. Listen to Elton John's most recent record. He sounds sounds really he sounds like a different guy.
Yeah. I was going to say Beast, his cadence feels a little off from...
Really?
Yeah, from the original. Not so much like the voice itself, but its patter, I guess. Not always, but there's a few...
I'm glad...
There's a few lines of dialogue. I'm like, is that the same guy? Then it'll go into it, and I'm like, yeah. It's like, is it?
One of my critiques would be like that one scene where Rogue uses like 3 cat euphemisms in like the span of 2 minutes. And I was like, dude, they have other sayings in the South. I am certain of it.
Yeah.
That seemed odd. But anyway, Magneto is a different guy. Professor X has not been in this, except with a weird cameo from Morph being weird, which is what he does. There's a little Easter egg in there, or like some subtext about how him and Wolverine were good friends, because they can with each other hard, apparently. And if anybody remembers the first 2-part episode where Morph was believed to be dead, and the writers really did want to create a character to kill him because they didn't want to kill any legacy characters, but they did want the show to go hard and for you to know that it's going to go hard. They wanted a character to die. So they created a new character, and then he took on a life of his own. Wolverine took that the hardest, and that would, but they didn't have a lot of room to explore that later, maybe in subtle ways. So in this, they come back to that. Whereas when they're at that bar, Morph kind of with him hard about Jean, like making himself look like Jean.
Wolverine probably would have gutted anybody else.
Yeah, but he just kind of has a conversation with him. It'd be like having Jim Carrey in the room with him and acting like he's just being completely serious. He's not, and he never is. I can pretend all I want, but I was like, that's actually really great writing. Because it shows their level. Because, if anybody else had said that, then it would have been game over. But Wolverine just took him as like, this is how you communicate. And we're having a deeper conversation. Then there was also the very end when, he brought him a beer and was trying to cheer him up. And he was like, it was during a voiceover. And he's like, nah. So he makes himself look like Sabretooth. And they're going to have a fight. So I thought that was... Wolverine is probably one of my least favorite characters in the X-Men. He's never really appealed to me. And I think this show uses him expertly well. Like with the thing with Magneto, perfect place for a fight. That's where you'd want your best warrior, right?
Yeah.
But he's like, that, I'm going to watch TV. And he just stays home and watches it on the news. And then Jean begins to have the baby. And they have the joke in there about when she says he's coming or he's here or whatever. And he's like, who? Apocalypse? and then she's like, no, the baby. And he's like, oh, crap. And then he has to it's like the tough guy that has to then be in charge of delivering the baby or getting the woman to the baby or getting the baby to the hospital and all that stuff.
That's something I always did like about the original animated series is Wolverine, this tough guy, but you could always see there's always that softy inside somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that he really does care about everybody, but he has to be tough because tough things have to be done.
And he's pretty psychologically scarred and has
that too.
Major issues.
The only other downside I see with the relaunch, and it's not so much this show itself, but all modern shows, is it's only going to be 8 episodes.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, if I remember that correctly. I hope I'm wrong, but that seems to be the going rate. You get 8 episodes and then 3 years of downtime.
Is that what Avatar did recently? I watched it and I can't remember how many episodes, but I think it was 8.
Yeah.
Or 6 or...
Because there's something else or the last couple things I've been watching, it's been 8 episodes, 12 at most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 12 is usually where Doctor Who capped, unless they were doing an extremely weird thing like the David Tennant specials that were his final episodes, or I think one of Jodie's seasons was incredibly shorter. I think that was affected by the virus, though,
yeah,
not the legacy virus or the techno virus. Well, shut the fucking world down. All right, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna talk more about the 8 episode thing. It's I'm glad we're getting more solid storylines, but I also hate the huge gap in between seasons.
Now that does... Well, have they announced the next season? Like, when it's going to be?
I don't know that they have, but I expect...
Maybe we can hope for a shorter lag.
Yeah.
But this just means, like, no filler episodes.
Yeah.
Like, no Wolverine going to Alaska and trying to find inner peace and weird B-plots that nobody cares about, or Jubilee learning the power of Christmas. Not saying if those are your favorite episodes, good for you, but those are filler. And we're not going to have that. So one of the things I want to talk about is this a retcon about the professor, or is it... I think they're setting up something like long-term. For fans who didn't watch the original series or don't remember, they haven't explicitly said the professor's dead. Like, the X-Men have. His death certificate came in. Yes. Is that because they had to declare him legally dead on Earth to the authorities? Because he, went missing. In their view, they know that he was taken by Lilandra. Is it because under Lilandra's care something went wrong? Because it's approximately like 6 months to a year. It's kind of vague what kind of time gap there has been, but there is a bit of a gap between the last episode and whenever this takes place. Because Jean is at least fully, she gives birth in this episode. So we could even say it's 9 months. She could have been pregnant before that last episode, and we just didn't know it. So it's hard to gauge. I wish there was confirmation on that, but there's minutiae details that don't really matter. Is it that the professor did die under Lilandra's care and sent word of that, so they went ahead at that point and declared him legally dead? It's hard to say. I think he's not dead, and I think they're setting this up for anybody who forgot or does know and thinks it's either going to be a retcon that he did die, or that, like I said, a fake out to make you think something did happen and that he is dead, because they haven't explicitly said that. And I think that it's going to be super powerful moment when he does come back. Maybe something like, because they drew on, this is a cool thing too, in the original series, the X-Men 92 series, they drew on storylines from like all eras of X-Men, even up to and including current storylines.
Yeah.
So you could have something from like the 60s or the 80s alongside something taking place concurrently, like when they did a really short jaunt about Age of Apocalypse. And they did a version of, like, they kind of mixed some stuff with Days of Future Past in there. There's a lot of time travel in the X-Men. So there's so many storylines, and really good ones since, especially the Krakoa storyline most recently, where the professor, kind of like the Maker, evil version of Reed Richard, wears a version of Cerebro on his head, obscuring most of his face, except for his nose and his mouth all the time. And I wonder, when he comes back, could he be wearing an all-black suit and is able to walk and wearing that version of Cerebro? That would be amazing. Yeah. I've tried not to find out any kind of spoilers or look ahead, and I think the show doesn't want you to do that either, because they only put stuff in that trailer from the first 2 episodes. I think there's a brief preview for the 3rd episode out now, but I watched a few seconds of it and then turned it off because I want to go in blind as much as possible on these.
I kind of wonder that myself. Where this is supposed to be a direct continuation of the original animated series, what are they going to dip into, and what characters are they going to bring in from the more recent comics?
Yeah, I mean, because at this point, Bishop's an old character.
Yeah.
And is fully, like, he doesn't go back and forth. Like, he's pretty much a member of the team and has been at least some version of the X-Men. He's been around for 20 years or something? Longer? 30? God, I don't know. I think once they introduced him, he was just kind of, like, eventually blended in and found his place in it and became a fan favorite amongst a lot of people and is kind of powerful. So, yeah, I can't wait. The guy, for people who don't know, the Jubilee analog, the mutant they had to rescue and then take care of, and then wants to leave and leaves, and they gets him in more trouble, and then they have to rescue him again, like Jubilee's first story. That's a guy from the New Mutants. So he was also in the New Mutants movie, and I think he was like a character in Days of Future Past, the movie, when they're in the future. I think he's one of those like unnamed background characters that gets killed immediately or something. So not my first pick for what you would do, but this is like the outfit. They could have chosen any outfit outfit. Magneto's been a good guy basically for 20, 25 years now, consistent. So they could have their pick of any costume he wore, but they went for the 80s when he became headmaster of the school. Now, for context, in the 80s, the X-Men's core lineup were not the world's strangest teenagers anymore. They were all adults and basically a superhero team. They weren't at the school anymore. But the New Mutants were a younger version of them that had their own comic. When Magneto became the headmaster of the school, he was basically the leader of the New Mutants, and he also worked alongside the X-Men. There was also a different version of that costume, the purple. Well, it's all, most of what he wears is purple or red. It was like a baggy thing. It was like a shirt and pants, but it wasn't like form-fitting. I think there was some white in there. I remember this with like Colossus wearing his like a red. It was just the other thing was red too, but it was like not the pointy shoulder thingy. It was a different version of that.
More like a tank top thing for Colossus.
Yeah, with almost like the asymmetrical, almost like a fighter pilot thing where it would like button up on the side, like what Luke Skywalker has, but it was just all red. So I think they might possibly want to introduce the New Mutants and redeem that movie. Not redeem it, but say, we up.
Yeah.
And here's what the New Mutants are supposed to be. Just like this, the X-Men movies, like, what happened there? It's like, you get a good one, you get a bad. You get an amazing one, you get a terrible one. And it doesn't go exactly in line like that. But
I think those are just cash grabs at the end. They knew that the rights to the X-Men were about to go back to Marvel, so they were just trying to get as much money out of it as they could.
Yeah. So, how did you think it was going to go with Magneto toward the end?
Honestly, well, I was going to say, I didn't know, but knowing what I do about the comics, I kind of figured it was going to go somewhere in that direction, but I didn't know how exactly they were going to take it. So the outcome wasn't a surprise, but the method was, if that makes sense.
I mean, it did throw me for a minute because I thought, that was really a powerful emotional moment when he just says, this, like, look what you've done. Because to turn a mutant, like, you've essentially killed a mutant in his eyes. Like, to depower them or to make them human is to make them less than, to de-evolve them, to make them less than what they are. It would be like chopping off a human's hands. So when he takes those judges and the guy up to the upper atmosphere or whatever, I was like, this is the fastest turnaround ever. And they're either gonna go like, because they've done this with Magneto in the comics, who when he was the headmaster of the school, when they decided they needed him as a villain again, just turn on a dime and he's a bad guy. I think it's cheap and lazy writing. So the one thing that bugged me about the original, and I didn't want to get into this earlier, in the 92 original series, they started setting the groundwork for Magneto to become a good guy from like his second appearance.
Yeah.
And like by the end, when they first fight Master Mold, Magneto comes in and helps them and more or less, saves Xavier's life and really helps them win the day. And from there on, it's back and forth like that. Like, he's not ever strictly a villain again. He's a character that comes in and out, but they keep referring to him as their most fearsome foe, and from all the stuff he pulled, and he's like, I'm just trying to live my life. I'm trying to build a better world for you people. I do what needs to be done. And it's not even, the stuff he does isn't even that bad. So it's just such strange writing for that. Even up to the last episode, they wanted him to feel villainous again in the original series. So they're like, oh, Magneto's at it again. And it's like, he hasn't even done anything in a long time that would warrant this level of vitriol.
No, that's something I think we need more of, is complex characters. Because it's like, the bad guys don't think they're bad, because it's always just opposing ideology. Because that's what made Thanos such a great character in the MCU, is because on some level he's not wrong.
Yeah.
But his methodology is what is the flawed issue here. And so I think that's what makes Magneto great, is, they could do it lazily just by saying, oh, he's a bad guy because we need a bad guy. But it could just be his ideas are opposed at this point in time, and you could make that a better argument than just saying he's a bad guy.
Yeah. So he gives this impassioned speech with the caveat, don't make me let you down. Oh, that gave me chills to know the the sheer power of the weight that those words can bring. And, you know, the evoking of the Holocaust, which is taken right from the comic that Chris Claremont wrote when he decided this character is more complex than this and he needs this nuanced background. So at the time, they were having a, you know, your regular old face-off against Magneto, and he's obviously pulling his punches, pulling back. But he didn't. And in a moment, he almost killed Kitty Pryde. And he realized what he had done. And he had this moment of weakness. And he goes to approach her and realizes how young she actually is. And that she's Jewish. And he sees himself in that. And it takes him back. That's where Chris Claremont's brilliance comes in and lets this character flourish. And it's been, you know, other writers have written him sloppily and lazily since then. But there's been some writers that have done amazing work with him. There's a 5-issue graphic novel run, arguably canon, not canon. So, but I highly recommend Magneto Testament. You can probably get the 5 individual issues really cheap, or the graphic novel pretty cheap. The artwork, some of the artwork's really good, some of it isn't, but it's basically life for Magneto before the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, and I don't want to really spoil anything about that. Because I'm recommending people read it blind. Just pick it up. Just know that it's hard. Like, if you have human emotions or a soul of any kind, you're going to weep a little bit during the reading of this. But that's the writing of a nuanced character. That's the power of comic books. They're not just rags to be tossed in the garbage can after you pay your nickel for them like people did in the 30s and 40s. It's not that way anymore. They're not the funny pages. These are real writers telling stories alongside artists working their hands into early carpal tunnel and not getting fair compensation most of the time. There's documentaries about that. I won't get into that here, but these are some of them. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you pick up who's the romance writer, Danielle Steele? It's just like, okay. There's a lot of novelists out there that just write what people want to read, and it's just sex and violence, and that's what sells, and they sell 1 million copies a year, and they make a comfortable living, and it's not high art. Not every comic book is high art, too, but if you're diligent, you can find it. So, and not always is it a great pairing. Sometimes you get some amazing art with some okay or bad writing, and sometimes you get some amazing writing with some okay or bad art. Yeah. So you never know. You have to discover that for yourself too.
So do we talk about the elephant in the room with this series? Or at least what some people are saying about this series?
I think it behooves us to. I think we have to at least address some of it because other people have done this. We've both watched some other takes on this, a ridiculous topic, but of course it was going to come up. How could it not? Yeah. Not for us, but for the general public.
For those who have no idea what we're talking, there is a group that is complaining, saying that X-Men has gone woke.
I think it's a vocal minority,
but they're loud.
They are loud,
and I'm going to preface this by saying I have come to hate that word, and I think we might even do a whole episode on why I hate the word woke, because everyone just uses it for whatever now.
Yeah, it's been corrupted. It no longer means what its original purpose meant.
And I won't go any farther into that. I'll save it for its own episode. But is X-Men woke? Not any more than it ever has.
Yeah. It's like saying Star Trek. Like when people are like, ugh, Star Trek's all woke now. They got now these are bigots talking, mind you. And I am using satire, sarcasm, and hyperbole in varying degrees and success rates. When people say Star Trek's woke, and you know that show with the Jewish captain and the Jewish first officer who's, you know, an alien and is also half human. So it's like interracial there. The black communications officer, liaison, is it a Russian? I'm not really sure what he did, but he was there at the helm.
He's the engineer, wasn't he?
The Chekhov was up
Yeah.
there with the. I think he became that, but he did something with navigation. And Sulu also is like they're both kind of there. Like, do you really need two guys to steer it? But I don't know, so it's hard to say. And Scotty, Sulu, Japanese American, not Walter Koenig, but George Takei, affected by the rounding up of internment in Japanese American internment camps. Who else do we have? Scotty, whatever, and that's not controversial, so it's not anyway. Yeah, with the first interracial kiss on television that. Other than Sammy Davis Jr. and Carol O'Connor, I think predated them. But the first interracial kiss that was a serious kiss between a man and a woman was William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols on Star Trek. That show ran from 66 to 69. It's 3 seasons. But it got woke a couple years ago, I guess. Imagine you live in the late 60s and this show it looks like a rainbow up there with like so many nationalities, so many accents, so many backgrounds and heritages. I am sure it was the character Carol O'Connor played's worst nightmare. Not Carol O'Connor in real life, but any of his racist characters that he played. So there you go. X-Men. You know what they did in 1975? They started a whole new group of X-Men. They're like, we're done with the old X-Men. Those guys, those tired old characters. We're coming at you with African woman, Canadian man. Let's see, Sunfire was Japanese.
We got a Russian in the time of the Cold War.
Yep. Colossus, German with Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
And let's see, I think Banshee was on that team.
Irish.
And I think Warpath, Native American.
For
and
2
I
issues.
think that's it. And then Cyclops was still on the team. So a bigger team, more expansive. Another rainbow, and their costumes, so bright and colorful. This was, and people are going to say, oh, it just got woke in 2024.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was the first. I didn't double check this, but bigger in Alpha Flight, but started, I think, in the X-Men comic books.
Yeah, because it's very connected.
Yeah, but North Star, one of the first openly gay characters.
The first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like openly gay, like purely just that, like no ambiguity, yeah, that word that apparently I can't fucking say.
Ambiguous. But
We'll get a dartboard and keep trying. Yes. So.
And that wasn't a recent thing either. He's been in the comics for a while.
And the writer stated, like, even though it wasn't like his first appearance, there was a reveal, but he said while he was writing it, this is something that he felt like he intended at the time, that this was underneath it all. What they can and can't do, you know, there's some, if you look through other books and writings, there's people who've said that Wonder Woman was originally intended to be a lesbian way back then. That's not what was done with her, but clearly you can see some intent with some writing there.
Well, the guy that also invented Wonder Woman was like heavily into BDSM in his personal life. So.
Yeah. So make of that what you will. Yeah, I think the easiest and best, the easiest way to destroy an enemy is to make him your friend. There's been a black man, I cannot remember his name, and I didn't intend to bring this up, but who owns and will show you closets full of KKK robes that he acquired from dismantling whole chapters of the KKK simply by making friends with them one at a time. And when he did that, he enlightened them to the stupidity of their ways, and they said, I can no longer go along with this belief system if now that I know you, now that I can see what this is. And they gave him to him so that he can have the proof and say, this is a relic of the past. If we work hard enough to do this, to unite and become friends with each other, the easiest way to discredit your enemy is to corrupt their language. And if this term woke has existed for an extremely a lot longer than people think. It's only recently been exposed to recently, like maybe 10, 15 years, it started really coming into the zeitgeist. And of course, the other side is going to take it, warp it, turn it into an all-purpose euphemism for stuff that means the other, and discredit it so that it can just mean whatever they want. An all-purpose liberal, I guess. Mm-hmm. I've been in the comment sections, and we think of internet trolls as like jerks, but I say you can troll those guys When somebody says, "Oh, no, I'm not watching woke X-Men. It's the old one for me," I got on there and simply replied to him, "Oh yeah, can you believe they put women in this? And black people? Oh my god. And the worst of all, they put mutants in this. That's disgusting. They put mutants in the X-Men. I'm on that team that's like the
FOH.
Yeah, the Humanity League.
Friends of Humanity.
Those mutants. Wait, are the X-Men the mutants? Am I the bad guy? Yeah, that's you. If you're listening to this and you're like, "No woke men for me, it's W men now." W probably stands for woman. Well, you know, there's been some strong leadership in the X-Men that have been women. It's okay, because you know what? They treat people with fairness, kindness, and respect. Rogue, and yes, Rogue has been the leader in the comics. She's not depicted as that in this iteration or incarnation of her character, but Storm and Jean definitely have. Yeah. And as long any leader that acts that way toward me, I'll follow to the end of the earth if I have to. If they treat me with kindness and fairness and respect, I see nothing wrong with anyone who takes on a leadership role. Now, if you're dickhead, you. Okay, so
yeah,
this is worth. I didn't know how I foresaw, especially. I don't know how our more recent episodes are going to do, because of course we want to have fun. This podcast started like analysis and like looking at art, cinema, and that ilk, and having fun with it. And in our private time, we have a lot of serious discussion and debate, especially when your wife and me and my girlfriend are all like at dinner together and turn into like a 3-hour slog of not heated. We all are basically on the same side, but you know, just back and forth discussion about things, and usually just trauma based. But it's interesting nonetheless, and so we're both interested in those topics and things, and I wondered, like, would we make our way to this? Is it worth it? I mean, I think it's worth it, but do I want to do that? Easily I can get... I have thoughts. Do I want to put that target on my back? Well, you know, I don't. I think about things like that, and I say, maybe better I'm basically straight white male, so that comes with some privilege. And I have used that privilege in the past in the real world to stand in the way of bullies and minorities. I'm not virtue signaling or spouting my own horn or anything like that. I know I used that phrase incorrectly. That's not a phrase to spout a horn. I am aware of that, and I heard that. Please don't put that in the comments section. But I'm just saying, if you have the opportunity to do that, bullies are generally cowards, and people like to... I don't think this generation has adapted to the real world yet, and by that I mean they're too used to living on the internet and saying whatever the they want on the internet. If you have a real world bully who comes out and talking like they do on the internet, when confronted, hopefully generally they back down, but I think usually it just devolves into a screaming match or them acting like a child. This is going to be the hardest episode for you to edit ever.
Just cut the last 20 minutes out.
Yeah, we put that on Patreon for that one guy.
Yeah, I think this is a good place to end. X-Men, no more woke than it has ever been. X-Men 97, so far, killing it. So we're going to wrap this up so we can go watch the new episode.
Yeah.
If you stayed with us this far, thank you. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We'll leave links in the comments below. But until next time, see ya.